Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're having some fun with a few videos looking at some futures odds here during this All-Star break, taking a look at all the title odds and MVP odds, which is what we're looking at in this video, as we'll run through the top guys here that do have a shot at winning the MVP once this season ends. Make sure you're staying on thelines.com. Got a great odds checker tool to make sure you're getting the best bets available around for you in each of these futures bets. And then also that player props tool that we have and that Nate continues to keep updated for us so we can take a look at what is available for you guys each day in terms of the player props around on each of the different sites and odds makers who are offering those to you guys. Get the best bets available and the best juice on your money for each of those. So yeah, we'll take a look at this one, as I said, the MVP stuff. So Nate, let's run through those odds for the MVP and then we'll talk about a couple of things with each of these guys.
Yeah, just as an example for that, you go to lines.com, you go to the player prop finder, and if you put in Joel Embiid, it'll show you his odds at every sports book, so you can find the best value. Because he's plus 130 at DraftKings and plus 145 at FanDuel right now. So obviously, if you had accounts at both places and you wanted to bet, you would go straight to FanDuel. So, yeah, just looking at the MVP race overall, it's obviously a three-horse race at the top here. Top tier is Embiid at plus 130, Jokic at around plus 290, and Giannis at plus 400. There is a second tier of guys in terms of the odds. I don't know how much of a long shot they are to pass all three of those guys, but Steph Curry plus 850, Ja Morant plus 1,100, and DeRozan at plus 2,200. Luka Doncic at plus 3,000. Is almost in that tier, but that's basically all we would even consider at this point. Kevin Durant, if he surprises everyone, comes back tomorrow, maybe. But he's already missed 20-some-odd games. So looking at just these top three guys, because that's really where the discussion is right now, barring injury or disaster to. Yeah,
well, real quick, I was going to say, too, just because you mentioned KD, and I don't want to talk about at the end, but plus 10,000, there's a world that he comes back, they rip off like 20 out of 24 wins, right? Reclaim like a 3 seed, and now it's like he's the discussion. So plus 10,000 for something wild like that to happen is potentially worth a small bet, but I think it's not worth talking about him specifically.
He's almost at kind of the minimum games missed to be taken out of MVP consideration. I think a few years ago when Kawhi played 60 games for load management, and he basically was not even considered, got a 1/5 place vote. Because, he's missed 23 games. If he misses 2 more, I think nobody would feel right voting for him. When there's 3 guys, this is important because it's this top tier right now. Jokic is on pace to set the all-time record for player efficiency in a season. He's at 32.5. The record is 32, set by Wilt in 1962. The thing is, Giannis and Embiid are also right around that number. Giannis is slightly over the record as well. Just as a quick aside, Giannis has the modern day record at 31.9 when he got his second MVP. And as another aside, both MJ and LeBron's career high is 31.7 PER, the exact same thing. And even their second best season is about the exact same thing. So keep having fun with that on Twitter. But Jokic, so it's interesting that in his follow-up campaign to the MVP, he's doing even better in terms of the advanced stats. When you look at it strictly by the numbers, which is what Basketball Reference does when they do the MVP tractor, he is a 36% favorite here to win the MVP, whereas Embiid is 11.5% and Giannis is 25%. I don't know how much they account for injury potential or anything like that, but I think it's just right now in terms of his impact, his value over replacement, his responsibility for wins for the Nuggets. Sure, he's ahead, but these are human beings, 100 of them, voting on the MVP. They don't like to vote for the same guy necessarily 2 years in a row. They'd like to vote for a guy who leads his team to a higher seed, and right now the Nuggets are the 6th seed in the West, whereas Sixers and Bucks are right in the mix for that 3 or higher spot in the East. And Embiid, finally staying healthy is getting a little more respect there in that regard. Jokic still, though, has missed the fewest games out of any MVP candidate. The Nuggets went 1-5 without him. We're not even remotely competitive. He's clearly the most valuable player to his team. It's just a question of whether his team deserves a true MVP winner this year, I guess.
And I hate when the conversation becomes to this about the MVP, right? Where it's like, well, this guy's team, that guy's team. And I just wish we would just have somebody, if there was, I don't know, a commissioner of basketball that could come out and say, this is the criteria at this point, right? It's about how valuable you are to your team, period, right? And I think like the cutoff is, let's just make it playoff teams, whatever, right? Because I really don't care, if say like a rookie who comes in on the worst team in the league and just plays, 38 minutes a game and is so important to his team, whatever. I don't care about that. I care about, like the difference between the teams that make the playoffs essentially, which is still half the league. But it's easy enough to do that. And I think, for the purpose of this discussion with Jokic, it's not a question about whether or not he's the most important person to his team. And to be honest, the roster around him isn't the worst roster available. I mean, you take him off and you've still got guys that can put the ball in the bucket, guys that can defend, guys that can handle the ball and play point guard all over the floor. They've got guys that are good at their individual roles despite not having superstars. So, I mean, look, their net rating when he's on the floor in 1,700 minutes this season is 10. Plus 10.1. When he's off, it's minus 10.6. I mean, the 20-point difference per 100 possessions for him being on or off the court this season. And that's in the games that he's played, right? And the amount of minutes. So, then you look at the plus minus, which not everybody loves, but I mean, it's worth noting because of the difference of him plus minus on and off the floor. When he's on the floor in games, they're plus 7. Right in his 33 minutes per game. When he's off the floor, minus 4.2. Right, so you're talking about another 11-point swing based on whether or not he's on the floor. So right now, I don't know, like you said, if he's the best bet out of the three, just because of the fact that the Sixers and the Bucks in a better division or conference rather are going to finish higher than the Nuggets most likely. Nuggets remaining don't have too difficult of a schedule, which will help them. I think they're all the way down, 23rd hardest. So basically 7th easiest schedule remaining, to 8th easiest schedule remaining for them in the league. So I do think they play the bulk of their games. They've got a couple left against Utah as well, which does help them if you like them to sort of overtake them in the division, which we talked about in our Western Conference video. But just bringing it back between him and Jokic, between Jokic and Embiid, it's just interesting that once again I think you're talking about the two guys that are the most important to their team, 1 and 2 respectively, with Jokic and Embiid. Now you've got the unknown of Embiid in terms of him playing with James Harden. How do you think that sort of affects his MVP odds? Because I should finish by saying I prefer Jokic to Embiid right now in terms of winning the MVP. But it's a wild card about what's going to happen with Embiid and Harden. It could potentially help him. But what's your take there?
Yeah, I don't think it'll necessarily help or hurt. I think it'll be a lot of your turn, my turn, and a lot of Harden taking a step back and lowering his usage rate considerably, which is what we saw when he started playing with Durant and Kyrie. He knows how to just be a facilitator. But yeah, it always does hurt when you have another star out there. Embiid might start to take the longer look here and do some load management down the stretch. The Sixers might continue to win games with James Harden and Tyrese Maxey blowing up, which is what they kind of been able to do in a few games with Maxey and Tobias Harris leading the charge. Embiid is obviously essential on both ends, but the Sixers, have that high profile win against Memphis without him when he just decided to take a night off. That won't be lost on voters by any means. Last year, it was kind of neck and neck between these guys, Jokic and Embiid, but the fact that Embiid had missed like 15 games and Jokic had missed 1 put Jokic way, way ahead of him. And right now we're at 12.
And one thing to add there is just, it was also when Embiid went down, right? And it was sort of 15 games in a row in the last sort of 30 games of the season. It's sort of that recency bias, right?
Yeah. And there are some unknowns here in terms of it, but I still trust his scoring. I think what I would prefer to bet is the plus 200 for him to win the scoring title than to win the MVP. Right now he has 0.2 more points per game than Giannis, but if I'm just looking at these three guys and trying to hedge bets for MVP, I would actually take Giannis at the plus 400 to get the most value here. Look, they almost have identical numbers, him and Embiid, in terms of points and rebounds, but as we know, Giannis a little bit more of an engine behind the Bucks. His efficiency has been out of this world lately. I know they both have 50-point historic 50-point games. Giannis just did it on 17 for 21 field goal shooting. I don't think anybody's ever done that before. And the fact that the Bucks have the hardest strength of schedule remaining is actually good for his MVP candidacy versus, their win total. He comes out and he plays the way he did against the Nets, against the Warriors in recent games, a few weeks ago. He can definitely get back to that point where he is both setting a record for player efficiency and getting that MVP consideration again. But the one thing in his detraction there is that the Bucks actually have a worse record when Drew Holiday sits than when Giannis sits. So really the most criminally underrated player out there is almost as vital to their success as Giannis.
Yes. And that's why, there's so many pros, cons for all three of these guys, right? And I would say, to be honest, like I know we've split it up into tiers where it's like Jokic, Embiid, Giannis are the top three. And then you've got DeRozan, Morant, and Luka in the next three. And I would say what's interesting is, the reason I interrupted you to kind of say, hey, remember Embiid got hurt also at the end of the season is right now, I would say all three of those guys are neck and neck. You could make cases for all of them. The biggest detractor for Jokic is that his team is the 6th seed, which is still like, okay. I guess if they finish at the 3 or the 4, how legit is that, right? That's what they were last season going into the playoffs. I believe was a 4 seed. So, what's to say that, it's my point here is it's the end of the season. It's all three of those guys. And DeMar to me is the 4th guy. I think that he's the 4th in there in that he's slightly behind them, but really what's going to happen in the last 24-ish games of the season for each of these teams is so crucial to what's going to happen in the MVP voting. It's really going to be about the last thing you remember, since they're just all neck and neck anyway. No one's going to be going back and nitpicking games in November. They're going to be nitpicking games in March and into early April, right? As they remember them the most, and they impact your seeding in the playoffs the most in terms of, okay, well, now we know what the records are. We know what it's going to take to get into the 3 seed or the 4 seed, avoid the play-in. Right now, it's just a new season, right? And it's really the second season of the regular season is the one that I think voters really depend on or utilize at this point, especially because, right, like I said, this season can just start over right now. They're neck and neck. It's the same as the beginning of the season in the standpoint that what's going to happen the rest of the season with those 3 guys. And I think DeMar's in there just because of what he's meant to his team. I think the net rating, he's also got a sort of a 10 differential in the net rating when he's on and off the court, plus 5.5 when he's on the court this season, minus 5.5 when he's off the court. So that's just as big. That's almost as big as Jokic, which is 20. But I think he's shown the importance to his team. The fourth quarter numbers, the clutch scoring as well, 4th in the NBA in points per game and in clutch points. His last 7, especially since LaVine missed some time, he went 38.5 points a game on 60% field goal shooting. Also filling up the stats this season at rebounds and assists at over 5 each, especially in those last 7. So look, he's going crazy right now, and I think like I said, one of these 4 guys is going to go crazier than the other one in the last 24 games of the season and really pull away and win this thing. I think the guy that right now I like to have the best shot to do that is Jokic, because I do think his team will continue to creep up. I think you look at the last point that you made before I started rambling, Giannis, and the fact that Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton are so important to what they do. Their record with all 3 of them is 24-7. You take just one of those guys off the floor and keep Giannis on there, and we're still talking about their inability to win nearly as many games. So I think the fact that Jokic is going to continue to do what he does, we saw what he did to end the season last year as well, which really just boosted him on top of, up so far that it wasn't a question anymore, especially with Embiid getting hurt. I think you can expect that from him again. And I think the result of that, especially with them having the 8th easy schedule remaining, is that, his team will get up to the 4 seed-ish. And I do think they have a legitimate shot at catching Utah, who's also been faltering as of late.
Yeah, no, I think the safe money is with Jokic. I think that there are enough nerds who bet on who vote for MVP that they will follow that same logic that Basketball Reference is using and just saying like, oh my God, Jokic is clearly the most valuable. You crunch the numbers. And there is some potential drama with Embiid, and there is more of a spread approach for the Bucks. I like that you bring up DeRozan as the 4th candidate, because he should be really just a plug. In the first or second month of the season, we kept pointing out how he had plus 30,000 odds to win MVP. So shout out if you got them at that. He's still getting plus 1,200 to win the scoring title right now, and is 1.5 points behind Embiid for that. or you can get about even money on DraftKings for him to get over his current points per game, which is 28.1. Like you mentioned, he's scoring 10 more points per game than that in his last 7. Just broke the record for 35-point games, shooting over 50% from the field. Absolutely unstoppable in clutch time. And he's only missed 4 games all season. I think 2 or 3 of those were just due to COVID protocol. So really, he's been the most reliable MVP candidate outside of those 3 guys. If the Bulls get the top seed, if those guys all falter for one reason or another, he's your next guy up. He'll certainly get some votes, and I like betting on his points average and those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. And the last point that I'll make, playing off what you're saying there is, one thing I'm realizing too is Jokic is the only guy in the Western Conference on this list of legitimate guys, right? I mean, Luka and John Morant sort of round out our top 2 tiers of actual contenders for the MVP. Ja, we mentioned, I just really want to get it out there again. They went 11-1 without him, and that was the moment that even if you were listening to basketball pods around the country at that time, people were like, "This is the moment that John Morant just lost the MVP potential." Right, most improved, totally. Like he's already he got it pretty much in the bag with the odds being what they are for him. What is it, minus for him to win most improved is
minus 450. But I don't. That's one you need to know the criteria. I would think Darius Garland is a better choice for that because he came out of nowhere. I mean, John Morant was already a borderline all-star, but we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, that's a great call. I mean, there's some great options there. Just to say, Miles Bridges, Darius Garland, DeJounte Murray, guys you have listed here. I love all 3 of those as potentials, and there's such big odds that Ja's definitely not worth putting money on there. It's just that he's favored to win it because he's gone from all-star, almost all-star to pretty much superstar. But maybe still a year away for the Grizz. Maybe need to find a little bit less depth for the playoffs and a little bit more superstar power. But the point is Morant has too many flaws. Luka, too many flaws, missed too many games. The Mavs not really going. I don't think. I mean, look, they're surprisingly good in my opinion. The 5 seed is incredible for them right now. I don't see them moving too far up or down away from that, to be honest. So I don't know that Luka's play and the Mavs play the rest of the season will impact him. So it's like we said, it's the 4 guys. But my final point being, those, like we said, a big part of this is going to be where does your team end the regular season. I do believe in the Nuggets to move up a seed or 2, either on the Mavs or the Jazz, and get a little bit better seeding to help his case. And then when you look at what happens with the other 3 guys that we're talking about, DeMar, Giannis, and then Embiid, they're going to be eating into each other's wins. They're going to be eating into each other's sort of placement in the standings, which could affect that as well. So I think Joker sitting over there in the West by himself actually helps him a bunch. And the fact that if the Bulls do get the 1 seed, which they're very capable of doing right now, we mentioned they're getting plus odds despite being first in the division by 2.5 games over the Bucks. They're getting plus odds to win the division. Another good indication that they're that if they continue this and they do win, DeMar getting them to a 1 seed would be wildly impressive, right? Especially with the way that they're playing some really good teams to end the season. Last thing I am going to say, because we haven't said anything about them at all in any of our videos, is that the Cleveland Cavaliers deserve a shout out. They're just sitting here in the 4 seed. We're not mentioning them at all. We're not talking about Garland. We're not talking about Jared Allen, both all-stars who played really well. And, I don't think that they're really ripe for any specific bet, but at least wanted to shout them out for having a really great season.
Well, Evan Mobley will win Rookie of the Year, so happy day there.
Boom. Precisely. So regardless, that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page, as we did have some fun bringing you some title odds and other content there with the Eastern Conference, Western Conference teams overall. So we will get back to our regularly programmed scheduling starting tomorrow, this Thursday, as we get back into action in the NBA. So until we see you next, happy betting.